As it is written, the three wise men brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. What do Oregon State and Washington State bring? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. I'm Drake Toll from ESPN Central Texas. If we had 10,000 subscribers by January 1st, I will shave my head. As you can see, there is a lot of hair there. You know, we've been talking a lot about this Oregon State and Washington State thing, and you're probably saying to yourself, you know, wherever you are, Drake, I wonder why we can't just talk about all the stuff that's happening right now. And I don't know why you sound like that, by the way, but glad to have you. And in this feels like something that we're on the front of, that you and I are getting to hear real time as the committee meets and talks about playoff expansion and where that will go. And if you stay at 12 and how long 12 is where the committee sticks. And then that opens the conversation of, okay, how much TV money is given here? And then when's the grace period of Washington State and Oregon State? And if that's 2 years in 2025 or 26, how many years do they get, $320 million given to two teams? All of this breaks down to this. There is a legitimate chance, a very good chance, that you and I are in the front of what is the future of the Big 12. There's a very good chance of what you bring to the water cooler here. If you're an Oregon State fan, you're pumped. If you're an Oklahoma State fan, you're knowledgeable. If you're a Baylor fan, you're in Spain without the S. Right now, you are on the forefront in your office of knowledge about college football expansion, because it is obvious at this point that something has to happen with these two teams, right? They can't just be floaters. They can't just make $320 a year for the next couple of years with or without the conference, with or without a grace period. So the NCAA, ESPN, everybody else, they are rushing to figure out what they can do with Washington State and Oregon State. So what does that mean for the Big 12? Well, you're likely going to get Washington State and Oregon State. It makes the most sense that these teams would be here. They're not going to go to the Big 10. ESPN, Fox, ESPN doesn't have the sway power in the Big 10 like it does in the Big 12 or even the SEC. And the SEC has a lot more CBS than anybody else does. So right now, the ESPN people, the bigwigs, are looking at the ACC, they're looking at the Big 12 and saying, where does it make the most sense to move these two teams? And it's going to be the Big 12. Now, what does that mean for us, Big 12 fans? Well, it means this league is now expanded to 18 teams. And the immediate reservation for me with this is the fact that of these two teams, now adding them, you've got a whole lot of Pac-12 holdovers. You've got 6 of those now. You'll have 4 new teams that are coming from the Pac-12, and you'll have 4 new teams coming from the Pac-12, 4 coming from that AAC and BYU sector, and then those 2 with Oregon State and Washington State. What it all boils down to here, 10 teams that aren't associated with the I-Rate 8. So if those 10 teams wanted to get a voting block together, and that's BLOK, I think. Don't ask me about spelling anything. I can't pronounce the thing on my hat. What is that? Lucchesi? Luck cheese? Zero idea. So grain of salt here on all of this. My big thing, now Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, TCU, West Virginia, Iowa State, the 8 teams left over can be outvoted in these conversations. I don't know if I like that. Here's what I do like, though. From a cultural standpoint, what we've heard from BYU, what we've heard from even UCF and Houston especially, these teams, these schools that are just happy to be here. Arizona State's not one of them. They don't sound happy to be here. Utah, as we'll get into, Kyle Whittingham doesn't want to be here, apparently. He wants to be. He's already looking for bigger and better things for a different conference. God knows if he'll be at Utah in 3 years, much less Utah be in the Big 12. So my deal is there are some dissenters in this decision. There are some Utahs and some Arizona States that I could see trying to band together against the I-Rate 8 and make decisions that benefit the Western schools. However, let's look culturally here. I don't think BYU's fallen for it. UCF is not. Houston definitely is not. Cincinnati is not. And the I-Rate 8, they're together, period. And I can tell you from a cultural standpoint, Washington State and Oregon State feel forgotten. Now, if you're new to the Big 12, if you're new to this show, if you're a Baylor fan, an Oklahoma State fan, that I-Rate 8, you know what it feels like to be forgotten. I was watching 365 Sports 2 years ago when a couple of the hosts said, it's done. The Big 12's done. This conference is over. Let's just all accept the Big 12 is falling apart and see where else we can go. Thank God they were wrong. But I don't blame them for having that sentiment. We all felt the same way. The Big 12 is done without Texas and Oklahoma. We know what it feels like to be the leftovers. We know what it feels like to be left behind. And we know what it feels like to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. That's not a cliche. You've never heard that before. To pull ourselves up and make a conference out of it. That's what Washington State and Oregon State are trying to do. They're not trying to infiltrate this conference to build some kind of voting block and give all the power to the West. What this brings is now the conversation of how do you merge these two teams into the Big 12? Well, I can tell you, the power team in this conversation is Washington State. Oregon State has been good at football. They have the blue-collar mentality. They have the left-behind mentality. But it is Washington State that will move the needle here. Average TV ratings from the Pac-12 to the Big 12 from 2015 to 2019 and then 2021. So this is excluding the COVID year. Washington State's number 4. Out of all of the teams in the Big 12 and the Pac-12, it's Oregon at 1, Stanford at 2, Washington at 3, Washington State at 4. That's 1.5 million per game. Average TV rating. This is from John Canzano. Average games over 1 million viewers between the Pac-12, the Big 12, and the ACC. 3 conferences in that same time span, 2015 to 2019, and then 2021. Clemson's number 1, Florida State's 2, and Washington's 3. Those are not shocking, right? Clemson and Florida State. 34 games for Clemson, over 1 million viewers in that span. Number 6, Washington State. They come in before any Big 12 team. They come in before Utah. And again, average TV ratings, they come in before any Big 12 team. And before Utah, who we think is going to dominate this league. Washington State brings a large viewership, a rabid fan base. They travel to every damn game day. It's what you see. This is a Washington State program that, albeit overlooked, has a solid fan base and a passion, Jake Dickert, for staying Power 5. These two programs, albeit Washington State carrying Oregon State, be sure that is the case here from a financial standpoint, from a viewership standpoint, from a brand standpoint. They deserve to be Power 5. ESPN needs them to be Power 5. So what does this mean for the Big 12? It means we got 2 new brothers coming in. What do they bring? A whole lot of juice. These 2 programs, Jonathan Smith and Jake Dickert, they are so excited by the idea of staying Power 5, and they will do anything to do it. They don't have to, though. I don't think they're going to have to take a pay cut to come to this league. I don't think they're going to have to. The league's going to have to bend over backwards and make them bend over backwards, or anybody's going to have to do a magic act for this to happen. We're on the cusp of it. We're ahead of the game here. And what's more, the only big thing we got to figure out now is travel. Do we do divisions? No. Do we do pods? No. We do protected rivals, baby. Get ready for the 4 teams you play every year. Then it's a mixture of the rest of them. And it's going to be awesome. This conference is going to be loaded top to bottom. And when you thought we are TCU, we're BYU, we are Texas Tech, we're not going to have any problems with Oregon State and Washington State. No. You're inviting in 2 hungry teams. They're going to be more than competitive. We don't have any Vanderbilts here. We don't do that. We don't have any Northwesterns here. And that's the beauty of the Big 12, man. Is it Lucchesi? I don't know. It's a fancy hat. I'm all in. Give me Washington State and Oregon State, and you should be too. Let's all change our Twitter headers to hashtag I'm with Washington and Oregon State. That's too long. Let's figure something out. I'm with OSWS. That sucks too. We'll figure it out. Here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Did you know, whether it's pronounced Lucchesi, or Luck Cheese, that you can make bets right now on FanDuel? Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I made the mistake last night of betting the Texas Rangers over 4.5 runs. What do? They score freaking runs, man. And the one game they don't score runs is the one game that I bet on the Rangers to do what? Score runs. I'm a big Texas Rangers fan. Some days it's good. It's been good for a lot of days. Last night it was not. Luckily, new customers get $200 in bonus bets. I got some bonus bets back too. Guaranteed. That's guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been looking or thinking about FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action than now. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season right. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Kyle Whittingham. You know what? This has happened before when he came out and he was like, oh, I don't know if we'll be playing BYU. That's not a terrible Whittingham impression. I don't know if we'll be playing BYU in a couple years. Like, I thought it was weird, right? Some people were like, oh, it's taken out of context. I went back and listened to the clip and was like, he didn't have to say that. He could have said, we're excited about the ongoing rivalry between BYU and Utah. We're going to curate this to be one of the best matchups in the league. Give me a little juice. He didn't do that. Then the freaking Kyle Whittingham. It's like I'm just asking for Kyle Whittingham to be normal. For 1 week, if Kyle Whittingham could just be normal. I've always liked him. He's like this weird, he's kind of like the Gundy of the West, where he says something, you're like, that's just Uncle Kyle. It's just kind of what he says sometimes. But why is it always now about expansion? Because they were like, reporter. He sounded like a young guy, kind of quirky. He was like, hey, so how do you feel about UCLA not being in the Pac-12? This is going to be one of some of your last matchups with UCLA. Is that weird? He's like, oh, yeah, we'll be playing them in a couple years. What? Who invited Utah to the Big Ten? And I know what you're all, there are Utah fans that are screaming. And remember, we made amends. I don't hate Utah anymore, right? We're friends. I never did hate Utah, but we made amends. We're friends. I was blown away. He did this again. There's no saving him. There's no, it was taken out of context. Why is he so pushed back against the Big 12? Why is he so anti-Big 12? I loved it. It was a quote from Chris Del Conte. He said on ESPN Central Texas on our radio show, he said, when we think about the SEC, we just don't. We think about where our feet are. Texas is thinking about where its feet are. Whittingham's not thinking about where his feet are. Yeah. He's not thinking about that. He's not thinking about the Big 12. He's not thinking about the Pac-12. For some reason, he is thinking about 3 or 4 years from now and how UCLA and Utah will somehow be in the same conference. Is he already plotting leaving the Big 12? And again, you can pull the whole he was being facetious. He was stirring the pot. No, he keeps doing this, Jazz. It's just weird. Why can't he just be happy with the Big 12? Why does he have to keep expanding? Is he pissed off at expansion still? Is Utah really pissed off still at expansion? No, and I get it to an extent, right? Like if somebody came in and uprooted my favorite team from its conference and I lost all this history, but Utah hasn't been in the Pac-12 that long. And I know why there's loyalty to the Pac-12 for Utah fans, because you're thinking, hey, this is the conference that pulled us out of the group of 5. This is the league that helped pull us into relevancy and maybe even help us, try to overtake BYU. I understand why you would like that, why you would miss that. But I remember, going to school at Baylor. When I was in school at Baylor is when Texas and Oklahoma left the Big 12. And I thought, oh, wow, I would love to go to the Pac-12. I would love to go to the ACC. I would love to go to the SEC. I mean, anybody that would take Baylor, I was overjoyed. If the Big 12 was going to fall apart, I was just hoping that my favorite team got to stay in a Power 5 conference. Hey, Utah, your favorite team got to stay in a Power 5 conference because the Big 12 said, you know what, fine, we will be your lifeboat. And then Utah was like, we don't really want to get on a lifeboat. Like, it's the last lifeboat. It's this or you jump in the water. And Utah was like, dude, the water looks good. I don't know why Kyle Whittingham's still doing this stuff. Is Utah planning to leave the Big 12 and go to the Big 10? Is there something we don't know about them playing UCLA in the future? You know what? It's just, to me, it's crazy because you don't have to say this stuff. You can just not. That's always an option on the table here. And I mean, looking forward in expansion for the Big 12, it's inevitable that it'll keep going, right? There's going to be more things are going to occur that add ACC teams, and it feels like the likelihood of UCLA and Utah playing in a few years is just so out of the realm of question. The Big 10 is not going to pull Utah away from the Big 12. And maybe even a bigger question in this whole deal, and maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'll put on my tinfoil hat for this one. How much longer is Kyle Whittingham going to be at Utah? Do you think he's saying this stuff? Do you think he is truly just stirring the pot or being a conspiracy theorist with knowledge that, hey, yeah, here in a few years, I'm not going to be, or even at the end of the year, I've heard from so many, like JT Worcestershire, is that how you pronounce Worcestershire sauce, whatever it is, on Locked On Utes, we had the conversation of, do you think he's still going to be here at the end of the year? And he's like, even I've heard murmurs. He's heard murmurs that Whittingham's just going to hang it up, that he's close to retirement. He's going to, ride off into the sunset, and he feels like he's been here too long. He's too old to lead Utah into the Big 12. Hell, I'd love to see Whittingham in the Big 12. I'd love to see him lead Utah into this next chapter. Will we? Is this his big elaborate thing to be like, you know what? I'm going to be the crazy drunk uncle. Not drunk, he's sober. I'm going to be the crazy uncle. I'm going to play some tricks. I'm going to come out and say things that don't make any sense. I'm just going to be a little whimsical, and I'm going to pull out, and I'm good. I'm done. You guys have fun. Is that what this is? Can somebody help me out and explain to me why Kyle Whittingham is being the way that he's being continually? Because you all told me that it's facetious, that he was taken out of context about what he said about BYU. Utah is still happy to be in the Big 12. They're not scared of BYU. Then why does he keep running away from the idea of being in the Big 12 so much? And again, you can make the case that he's just saying college football is crazy, anything can happen. But no, he's making the case that Utah will play UCLA in a couple years. This could be a real thing. This could really happen. Why? How? What does he know? Does he know something? Or is he just talking out of his butt? Is he blowing hot air up our skirts? And if he is, for the purpose of what? What does it gain him? I don't know. What does it gain us? Confusion. Utah, do you want to be here? Do you not? That's my question. Make it make sense, please. Kyle, if you're listening, give me a call. We just need to talk. And if everybody else who's listening, thanks for making this your first listen every single day. I don't know if I've said that in the middle of a show before. I just wanted to thank you. I was just feeling real thankful right now. I'm also feeling thankful that the Big 12 released a video of its new basketball schedule. That's next on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right. I'm sure you all saw this. The Big 12 has released its basketball schedule for 2023-24. Seems a little late, by the way. Tuesday, September 26th, they released this, and basketball season starts in like a month. All right, plan your travel now, I guess. Wow. I first want to say the Big 12 put out an announcement video that was like 4 minutes long. I don't know if you saw that. I'm not going to play it on here because I'm going to rip it. And they would hate for me to go all in against it and then say, here's the video. That'd be a copyright issue. It was bad. Fran Fraschilla was in it, which was super cool. There was some random TikToker who I'd never heard of who was also in it. It was just ungodly long. We took way too long to get to the point and actually get to the schedule. I had to turn it off. I was like, I'm just going to look at the graphic. We were a minute in and all the teams were on a Zoom call, which was super cool. And they were like, and here to help us. And I was excited to see who they were going to have help them reveal the schedule. And they were like, here's Shanae from TikTok. Dude, what? Not my generation. And if it's not I'm 22. If it's not my generation, whose generation it is? One of the first misses, very few, one of the first misses for the Big 12. Didn't like it. Maybe you did. Observing this basketball schedule, good to see some of the big dogs that are playing multiple times. Kansas, that's the first schedule you look at. This is the best team in the Big 12 for sure. They get a taste of Baylor twice. They get to play Texas this season. Everybody's going to get to play everybody once. They get to play Texas once, Oklahoma State a couple of times. They get Houston twice on the docket. I love that part of this schedule. The Kansas schedule overall, opening with TCU is big. Remember, TCU is good now. Then they get UCF and Oklahoma State and West Virginia. And Cincinnati, all of those should be wins. Iowa State in there for Kansas as well. That's the first schedule you look at. You see Baylor twice, which is big. You see Oklahoma on there twice as well. And then that big Texas matchup. The last Texas and Kansas that we're going to get is huge. A couple of Kansas States as well. Those are matchups you key in on. I would say looking at this, having dissected the schedule, the toughest one that I see is Cincinnati because of the way it starts. So you go BYU at home. That's good. We're BYU on the road. I'm sorry. That's good. I think Cincinnati can beat BYU. BYU's just, they're going to have to figure it out in basketball. They're going to figure it out in basketball. It's going to be a good little punch in the mouth. Then you go Texas, Baylor, TCU, kind of a break with Oklahoma, then Kansas. That's tough. In a 5-game stretch, you get Texas, Baylor, TCU, Kansas. Like that's 4 top 15 teams in a 5-game stretch. Welcome to the Big 12, Cincinnati. Best of luck to you. For the other newbies here, it just reminds me how good the Big 12 is at basketball and how these new schools just have not been that prominent. Cincinnati was, then post Mick Cronin, what have you done for me lately? Like UCF gets to play Kansas State on the road to open up Big 12 play. They get their ass rocked. Then they play Kansas. Oh, UCF's not a bad program. UCF has been, to me, tournament ish-esque, right? For the last few years, it's like, there have been some ups and some downs. This is a fine program. You can't do that in the Big 12. You can't do that, man. They get Kansas State and then Kansas to start the year. 4 of their first 5, Kansas State, Kansas, Texas, and Houston. That is 4 top 15 teams in the first 5 games. What a slap in the absolute face. They get Baylor at home. That'll be fun. Baylor basketball in Orlando against UCF. What's more, let's go BYU here. The Cougars get Cincinnati. Now, this one's kind of fun. This is a fun little Cincinnati at home. BYU can win that game. Then you get Baylor, then UCF. This is not the worst start. Baylor is a tough one, but you can beat Cincinnati and UCF. Then you get the gauntlet. Everybody in the Big 12 is going to have like 4 straight games where you just go, well, it was fun. Iowa State, Texas Tech, Houston, and Texas. What a terrible point. In the span of 5 games, BYU gets Baylor, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Houston, and Texas. 3 of those 5 are top 15 caliber programs. That is brutal. BYU will get Baylor twice. I think that should be a curated rivalry. They'll get Kansas State twice as well. They get Kansas later in the season on the road. TCU once. That'll be an interesting matchup. They get Oklahoma State twice. Opportunity to maybe pull out 2 wins there for BYU. But again, I'm reminded how tough this is for the newbies, except for Houston. They're the king of the new teams, right? The top 5 program year in and year out under Kelvin Sampson at this point. They get West Virginia at home. I love that they start the season with a home game, then a couple on the road. Iowa State and TCU are both tough. I think they're going to be the ones that handle the gauntlet the best. West Virginia at home, easy win. West Virginia just fired Bob Huggins. Everybody left. That should absolutely be a win. Looking up and down the rest of this schedule, that Iowa State road game and TCU road game, I could even give you both of those. You could start 3-0. Texas Tech at home, you could probably win that. UCF, at home. Then BYU. Houston has the best shot of any of the new teams that's starting really hot. Then Kansas State comes to your house as well. Then you hit, this is kind of your run of death. Kansas State, Texas, and Kansas. 3 straight games. That's tough. Later in the season, Texas, Iowa State, Baylor. That's tough. Houston's in the best spot, though. They got a pretty favorable schedule here. They only see Baylor once. They do get Kansas twice, which is tough. They do get Texas twice, which is tough, but they only see Baylor once. They get a good slew of the new teams. I think they are pretty much guaranteed more dominant than UCF twice. They get Cincinnati twice as well. So Houston's going to be okay. New teams, this one's pretty brutal. Looking at the way the schedule shakes out, I do like the spot that Kansas State is in, despite playing Kansas twice. I think they can win a couple of those. Any team that's playing more of the UCF, more of the Cincinnati, that's going to bode well. So you go up, you look like Baylor's schedule. They get Cincinnati once. They get UCF once. They get BYU twice. That's tough. You really want to have 2 Cincinnatis or 2 UCFs. Not to say those are bad programs. And maybe even BYU. Maybe you want to see BYU more often. Not that those are bad programs, but they are going to need to take a massive jump before going to the Big 12. That's the Big 12 basketball schedule. How fun is that? Oklahoma State's in there. There are a couple teams I didn't really mention. Oklahoma State exists. They're going to be in there. Texas and Texas Tech, we'll see how good they are this season under new leadership. Everybody wants a Baylor coach now, Grant McCasland. Thanks for making Locked On Big 12 your first listen every single day. 10,000 subscribers. I'll shave my head. You heard it here first. This has been, it always will be, Locked On. Thanks again for making it your first listen every single day. I'll be in Provo tomorrow. Doce Grande.